First on film and entertainment, we have with us Jackie Hamilton, only for a few minutes. There are other commitments in her life that are far more important than us. Jackie, we understand, but nice to have you with us.
Good morning.
Oh, that's it? No dissertation? I wanted a little bit of, padding from you at this point. Anyway.
Good morning and lovely to be with you.
Thank you. Oh, that's much better.
How's that?
Peter Krause, I wasn't referring to you as padding because you never are. Your valuable contribution, even though it's argumentative, it is never correct. I still accept that. Isn't that good of me?
That is so nice of you, even though you're wrong most of the time.
Yeah, a deep-seated sense of understanding comes with our fraught relationship. There we go. What could be better than that, folks? Having said that, we want to start with a movie that I found deeply affecting. Now, I have spoken with Jackie off microphone about this. And once again, I've got two recalcitrant individuals because I think her take on it is going to be decidedly different from mine. I suspect Peter will favour my view. But there we go. Let's find out. We're talking about what month are we in? May? Let's skip forward to, about 6 months? November. That's the name of the movie. It's M-rated. It's 107 minutes. And actually, it's a very, very serious topic. Let's go back in history. We're going back around about 7.5, 8 years. And in fact, 13th of November, 2015. And unfortunately, this was seared into my mind. And I dare say the two people I'm speaking with will recollect it similarly. There were a series of coordinated terrorist attacks that took place in Paris and also the city's northern suburb, St. Denis, on that particular date. 130 people were killed. There were 416 that were injured. Peter, you remember this, I presume, from the news?
Absolutely. It was covered quite extensively.
And Jackie, you likewise?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was one of those periods because France was already on high alert. There were a couple of gunmen who'd attacked the headquarters of the satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo on the 7th of January that year. So in other words, we're talking about the start of the year. This movie concentrates on the end of that year. I remember it well insofar as I was there soon after the Charlie Hebdo. I was there with my wife soon after the Charlie Hebdo incident. And that 12 people died in that one and 11 were wounded. And the city was on high alert. I remember it. Anyway, November, this movie is the tension-filled story of the 5 days that followed the 13th of November attacks and the anti-terrorist police's attempt to track down those involved. And I mean, it's not hard to believe it is real. Nerves were frayed. I mean, no question about it. Time was of the essence because those questions made it clear to the authorities that this was only the start of a bloody campaign by ISIS. And the film focuses on the lead investigators of the French anti-terrorism services. What is interesting is that all the terrorists that are named are actually the names of the terrorists, but the character names outside those are fictitious. So, Peter, what they've done is they've created characters or amalgams of characters, correct?
That's absolutely right, for various reasons, including legal reasons, yes.
Yeah, and so among these characters, I'll go through some of them. There's Heloise, played by Sandrine Kiberlane, under pressure from the minister's office, and then her chief commander, Fred, Jean Dujardin, who is intense and driven. Now, also, same could be said about the captain, Ines Mouret, played by Anis de Mostier. She steps outside the rules of protocol and has a lot of making up to do. And then there's another figure of note in this one, a civilian informant called Samaya, played by Lena Kudry. She risks her life for the greater good, but that comes at considerable cost. Now, the film has been written or co-written with Olivier de Mangle and is directed by Cedric Jimenez. And it's an insight into the desperation, the determination, the dedication that surrounded the days following the attacks. That is basically what the essence of it is. And the angst, the tension are palpable throughout the performances and the cinematography, I thought were very, very strong. There are so many leads to chase up. And unless somebody comes out and immediately declares it's them, And even if they do, it's a question of tracking down who they are, the people involved. So many of these leads, of course, turn out to be red herrings. Of course, the more time that elapses, the more the weight of expectation builds, and the frustration, the toll that it takes on people on the ground is quite evident. So it's a large jigsaw puzzle with global tentacles. So that's what November is all about. Jackie, let's start with you. I found it really strong and compelling. You didn't?
I found it a bit police procedural, Alex.
Right.
I wanted a bit of a more rounded story with less of the frantic action chase scenes. We weren't given a chance to really get to know who was who, except for perhaps a very small handful of characters, maybe 2 or 3 we really got to know out of a very large cast. And so we didn't really get to see the impact on them and their lives. So I found it very much a police drama with a heck of a lot of shooting and a heck of a lot of running and chasing.
Yeah, but hang on. That's not different to a lot of movies where the concentration is on some key characters, and then there's those in the periphery.
Except that this is based on, a real, or more than based on. It's almost a docudrama in some ways on actual events.
I accept that, but this is the challenge that any form of art has. What, you're going to concentrate on 12 characters? There just isn't the time. So they've sort of taken from that the 4 that I think I've mentioned are probably the pivotal characters. I actually was not troubled by that at all, because there was some weight given to the sub characters, and I thought that worked kind of nicely. Did you find it too complicated?
Oh, I didn't know what was going on for a good part of it. And I think that was kind of deliberate. I think that kind of gave the atmosphere of the confusion that they may have, the country was facing at the time, although the police certainly shouldn't have been too confused in what they were following up. But very confusing. But that was also to do with the character development, because you didn't know who was doing what and what operative they belonged to, and what their position was. And there were a couple of very odd things that came about if this was an amalgam of the way that they went about the chase. There was the one police detective who made a major error early on in the piece, and yet was immediately placed back on without any apparent reprimand to continue leading, or certainly being in charge.
Hang on.
Part of the.
Wait a second. That's the figure that I mentioned made a mistake. This is a woman, and she was dressed down and basically said she's on her last chance. That was actually part of it.
She was told off and put straight back into the work. But what I did like about the film was that by about 2/3 of the way through, the suspense by then, you could tell, was really quite had built up. It had built up to a state of suspense, and that was worthwhile towards the end to get to that, because it certainly was a dramatic finale, if you like.
Well, look, I felt quite wrung out by the end of the movie, and I reckon that's exactly what the filmmakers were seeking, Peter.
I absolutely agree. Look, yes, it is a police procedural, but it's a very important one. And the French are so good at making these types of films. I mean, we've seen Night of the 12th as another example. But the whole issue of those terrorist attacks in 2015 have been observed in a few other French films of late. And this is an important way to expiate, I suppose, that awful experience. I think this was a very well-handled film. I think the dislocation and the difficulties in the investigation, the finding of suspects or attempts to get behind the scenes, to get contacts and whistleblowers and all that sort of thing, I think that was very effectively handled. And Jean Dujardin did a great job as the main investigator there, and Jeremy Renier and Sandra Kibberlane. It's a very good cast. What I really liked about this film is the process that had to be used to be able to find these terrorists, and it's not an easy one. And so the way the filmmakers handled that, I think, was very effective. I think the correlation with what was happening overseas, there was a sequence there where we understand that this was a rallying call with ISIS and so on, to wreak vengeance, if you like. But also, I think there is a lot more going on, which I was actually quite impressed by. I must say one other thing. The women who were involved in perhaps being whistleblowers, there was some issue about one of them wearing a hijab. Sorry. Yes, and it seems from what I read that that was incorrectly depicted, and so the filmmakers were sued about that. So
really,
I think.
and
Yes.
do we know what happened? The outcome?
Yes. The woman won her case that she was given money to make good, or compensation, if you like, for the incorrect depiction of her character.
Really, that's fascinating. Well, I thought it was a pivotal role. We're talking about Lena Kudry, who plays this sort of good Samaritan who you can't help but empathise with. And to me, I thought Jean Dujardin, who's a very fine actor, quite authoritative and compelling as the commander, who sort of demands, well, he doesn't, he does demand total commitment. And I thought Anne de Moustier, who worked on gut instinct and felt deeply, that was I thought it was a well-developed character, because you got an insight into the fact that she really cares, but she oversteps the mark, and also there's really a fine attention to detail that the cinematographer Nicholas Law captures. I thought the cinematography was a feature of this, and the production value is actually a very strong throughout. But given the nature of the plot, and this is where I said, asked Jackie earlier, how confused she was. You really need to concentrate to follow all the threads, because there are lots of them, right? I thought this was a perfect depiction of, you imagine an incident and you don't know where to start, and you're going after lead after lead after lead. I mean, most police incidents, not most, but many that have complexity to them, would be exactly like this. And I felt I was involved from the get-go, and I was involved till the very end. So it's interesting. I had a different take on it, Jackie. So, as I say, I mean, I thought this was a very fine movie, and it's one that is well worth seeing, but you've got to go in there with the right mindset, Peter. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I suppose so, to some extent, and certainly a film about a terrorist act is not an easy film to watch.
No, but Jackie, you would have seen other movies about terrorists.
Oh, look, Alex, I was going to say, I don't mind concentrating heavily on a movie. I don't feel the threads were actually there, even though we were in the dark room feeling round for them. It was all a trick, and there weren't any threads that were given to us to follow on this. And I know this film is being compared with Zero Dark 30. Yeah. And I can see so many similarities between what, the way that it was set up and what they're trying to achieve, and even in the outcome. And to me, just if you compare the two, Zero Dark 30 is just, head and shoulders above what we received in the film November.
So, look, it is M-rated. It runs for 107 minutes. What are you going to give November out of 10?
6 out of 10.
Okay, Peter, I'm sure you'll be much higher. Go for it.
Yes, I was quite impressed by the film, and I'm not quite sure of the comparisons with Zero Dark 30, but that doesn't matter. I give it 8 out of 10.
And I give it an 8 out of 10 as well. Jackie, we've appreciated your insight, and we will allow you to depart and attend to your other matters for the day. And Peter and I will try and hold down the fort without you, which is going to be difficult. But
enjoy yourselves, and I shall speak with you next week.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jackie. So, Peter, let's move on J-Air. By the way, I should mention, great programming 24/7. So, we do expect you to sleep a little bit. But other than that, tune in to J-Air 88 FM. And look, we'd love to get your money. Now, I don't mean that in a nasty way, but we need subscribers. We are a radio station that is very much community-based, and we rely upon support to keep us keep the wheels turning, and the people on the what is it, the treadmill to keep running. All it takes is to go to j-air.com.au and you follow the various leads, and you can subscribe for $54 a year. $54 a year gets you a subscription, and you become a member of J Air and the J Air family. So what could be easier than that? Peter, let's turn to another movie now. We'll talk about the next two are very much in the sort of romance stakes, and one is a younger version and one's an older version. I want to talk about Book Club, the next chapter, first, because it gets to the essence of something that really concerns me, which I'd like to discuss with you. It's 108 minutes. It's rated M, Book Club, the next chapter, and it is a feel-good sequel to the 2018 movie simply called Book Club. And it concerns the ongoing fate of the four women at the centre of the original as they undertake a special girls' trip. So you've got Vivian, played by Jane Fonda, perpetually single, just been asked for her hand in marriage by her long-term suave boyfriend, Arthur, played by Don Johnson. But before the nuptials, Carol, Mary Steenburgen, puts it to the others, the other three girlfriends, that they should make good on a promise they made, I think it was decades earlier, to travel to Italy. Mind you, Carol is worried about her husband, Bruce, Craig T. Nelson, who has just had bypass surgery. Former Judge Sharon, Candice Bergen, is not too keen on taking the trip because she has an ageing cat to care for. But soon enough, that becomes a non-issue. And for Diane, played by Diane Keaton, who is in a loving relationship with Mitchell, Andy Garcia, she still has not disposed of her dead husband's ashes. Then they take this bachelorette holiday, right? Bachelorette because Vivian's getting married. And they have a series of adventures and misadventures. So they encounter an Italian policeman, a smooth-talking retired professor, and a chef who happens to have been Carol's old flame. So like the first chapter, Book Club 2, shall I call it, the next chapter, is written by Bill Haldeman and Erin Sims, and Bill Haldeman directs. So that just replicates what happened 5 years ago. It starts out with promise. There are some interactions between the women while they're on Zoom during COVID lockdown, as all of us were. Zoom teams, call it what you will. But I thought some of those were genuinely laugh aloud funny. And I thought, oh, golly, this is sort of heading in the right direction. And then very quickly, the picture hits a roadblock. They waste a lot of time getting, these are the women amongst themselves, getting to agree to the holiday that we've talked about, right? Which was always going to happen from the moment it was mentioned. So just get to it. You don't need that preamble. That was just sort of wasted space as far as I'm concerned. Thereafter, for much of the remaining film, virtually everything was signposted. So, I mean, I'm not going to go through all of it, Peter, but stolen luggage, tick. Romantic encounters, tick. Stunning landscapes and landmarks. And yeah, they really are stunning, no question about it, but tick. And so on it goes. So the whole thing is manufactured and predictable. Where are the unexpected plot twists, the genuine surprises? Sure, the narrative comes from, well, what I'll call the never-ending bank of sanguine material, but it does seem to me, and this is the point that I was making at the outset, it's such a waste of top-notch talent. These are some of the finest actors of a generation, and they often deliver a succession of corny and at times sexually charged one-liners. It almost appears to me as if, aside from a cadre of British actors, and we can name them, women get to 60, 70 and beyond, and the industry all but abandons them. Now, they're left to deal with scripts that I reckon would be more at home in a B-grade telemovie. Why? I mean, surely there's an audience for intelligent, engaging, entertaining, thought-provoking cinema involving our third generation of females. And no, that does not rule out comedy or romance. I get that this is firmly in chick flick territory, and I've got to say that I often warm to that. But the problem is when humour falls flat, as it often does, what results is little more than cringeworthy. And there are certainly those moments, unfortunately, in Book Club, The Next Chapter. Look, I've got to say, and to be fair, I feared that before seeing this film. So I suppose you could say I wasn't disappointed. It is a very nice looking film with very little substance. Some people are going to appreciate it, but yeah, are we not better than this? I mean, there's another one, what, 80 for Brady or whatever, out at the moment as well. So yeah, Peter, I'm curious as to whether you agree with me or not.
I do tend to agree with you, but this film, like 80 for Brady and a number of other films that feature a group of women who go on a journey of self-discovery, go on exotic trips or whatever to find out more about themselves or their romances or whatever, is a fairly strong subgenre staple in filmmaking.
Yes.
And there is a ready-made built-in audience for this type of film. Look, I have to say, in this one, they seem to have jettisoned the whole idea of the book club in the first place, apart from a few very quick references to books, but it's really dismissive.
Yeah,
and it's,
there is one reference that keeps on coming back, and I've gone blank on the name of the book. But yeah, I mean, it's almost it's an excuse, isn't it? That's why they got together in the first place. They could have just called it The Next Chapter without the word book club. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it The Alchemist, I think?
Yes, it was The Alchemist. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But I thought that was somewhat contrived in terms of life journey. Yeah. But nevertheless, look, yes, the circumstances that the women find themselves, and they're very middle class and very well off, so they can handle losing their luggage and all that without any issues. I found it fairly superficial and really as vehicles for all of them to be given some amusing lines here and there. But really, in terms of character development, it is fairly lackluster.
Yeah, and that's the point that I'm making. It doesn't need to be. If we had a better script, you can't. It doesn't matter what age a person is. I get to the essence of a good movie. It's got to be well written. And why do we constantly get the predictable? That's not. It lacks originality. It lacks some spark.
Yeah, I agree, but why don't we get more originality? It's called box office, and it's called studios wanting to make money, and this type of film is a very safe option, knowing that the actresses, who are all terrific, will appeal to a large group of people, and they'll want to go and see them in the cinema, as happened with 80 for Brady and other similar films. I think also mixing in this travelogue sort of issue, going to exotic places like Venice and Rome and Tuscany and so on. It is such a familiar trope under the Tuscan Sun and so many other films that have dealt with this sort of area. It's just what's called a comfortable journey of self-discovery without any major revelations or any real
I'd love to know how much this was paid for, Peter. I don't know what this would have cost to make, because, I mean, okay, even if we're not talking about top dollar for these actors anymore, it wouldn't have come cheap, given, you know, we've talked about the talent. Like, there's 6 very, very well-known names in this. So, you know, obviously the studio said, well, let's stick. If it wasn't these people, would this have been out in the cinemas? If it was no names? No, I don't believe it would have.
No, well, not in the same sort of format, because if you're dealing with a more existential drama sort of situation, it would be quite a different script.
No, but even I'm just talking about exactly this script with no names. This would have been a straight to TV release. It wouldn't have made the cinemas.
Possibly, but if we look at Spanish, German, Italian films that all have similar sort of tropes in the films that they make, and don't necessarily have well-known actors, audiences still want to see it, and you have to say that there is a large female audience out there that want to see this type of film, especially with names, good actors and well-named actors. So look, there is an audience for it, but if you're looking for something with a bit more depth, then obviously this is not the film for you. It was also interesting to see the depiction of some of the Italians, including Giancarlo Giannini. Interesting to see him who's been around for so long in cinema, doing a sort of a throwaway comedic police officer role, which I thought was a little bit demeaning. I thought, I don't know, and how easy was it for them to get a police helicopter to be able to...
Well, that was a very good point. I mean, basically, you snap your fingers. He's the bloke in charge. Oh, yeah, I'll bend the rules. I'll do exactly what you want. I'll roll over and play dead. Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm saying. This is pure fantasy. That's what it is. Now, okay, I get that people like to escape, and this is escapist. It's escapist with a capital E, no question. So, okay, what are you going to give it out of 10? Book Club, the next chapter, M rated 108 minutes.
Okay, and I must also endorse what you said at the start, where they did the lockdown Zoom sort of stuff. I thought that was going to turn into something quite funny and clever, but yeah, unfortunately, it didn't go there. Look, because of the actors in it and the way it was filmed, even if the script was a bit so-so, I barely give it a pass, so I'll give it 5 out of 10. Yeah,
and I'm giving it 5.5. So, good golly, we're in furious agreement today so far. That is rather scary.
Yes,
it is. You're listening to J-Air, and at the moment you're listening to Peter Krause and Alex First. So we should move to a younger generation with some similar proclivities, and we're talking Love Again. All right, Emma rated again, and it's 104 minutes. So you've got a children's book author by the name of Mira Ray, played by a very beautiful and talented actor who is noted on the world stage. Her name is Priyanka Chopra Jonas. And Mira Ray, whom she plays, is deeply in love with John, played by Arinz Kenny. And he is unfortunately tragically killed in broad daylight by a drunk driver. And understandably, she goes into a deep funk. She seeks solitude by moving in with her folks. A couple of years on, after umpteen overtures, her sister Susie, played by Sophia Barclay, manages to convince Mira to head back to the city so the pair can live together. I'm not sure whether they were living together before. I'm not sure that was really established, Peter. But anyway, John's untimely death continues to haunt Mira as she has an awkward dating encounter with Joel. Now, what's fun about that is that Joel is played by Nick Jonas, who is Priyanka Chopra Jonas's real-life husband. And there's a particular, I won't destroy it for anybody, but there's a scene where he goes over the top, and that's the end of it all. So that was nice. That was a nice little touch. Anyway, 35-year-old Rob Burns, played by Sam Heughan, is a music critic for the New York Chronicle. Obviously, it's a made-up newspaper. He was shocked when his fiancée dumped him without explanation a week before they were due to walk down the aisle. Against his better judgment, his boss at the newspaper, Richard Hughes, played by Steve Oram, tasks him with writing a feature piece about Celine Dion. And, well, Dion plays herself, but she plays a sort of comedic version of herself, but a very bossy comedic version of herself. And sort of basically she ends up giving this Richard Hughes, sorry, not Richard Hughes, the Rob Burns character, the star of the show, Sam Heughan, life and relationship advice. So bear in mind, Rob Burns has been dumped. He goes to a news conference that Dion is at. Dion doesn't appreciate his distractions and attitude and starts giving him life lessons. So Burns and his colleagues have been given work mobile phones. When out of the blue, he starts receiving heartfelt text messages. And unbeknown to him, they are from, and we get round circle here, from Mira Ray, who is texting her dead boyfriend as a matter of catharsis. Of course, Mira has no idea that John's former telephone number has been reassigned, which obviously does happen if you no longer want a number or you no longer have any need for a number. Burns is deeply moved by the messages that he's receiving, and he sets out to meet the person who sent them. When he does meet Mira, their connection is immediate, but he withholds the backstory, which shatters Mira's trust. So there we have the bare bones of the structure. Now, it's what I'd call a fantasy dramedy again, Peter. where everything is carefully manufactured to get to the outcome that we all know is coming. And that, of course, involves inevitable bumps along the road. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a movie. And I can say it's naturally the journey that counts, at least from the perspective of the viewer. It's based on a novel. I think it's a German novel, Text for You by Sophie Kramer. Is that correct, Peter?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's been written and directed by Jim Strauss, who was also responsible for the movie The Incredible Jessica James. Look, there is some respect and charm about the way that the story plays out. I appreciated the quirkiness of the characterization of the two sisters, as well as the moral compass, I can call it that, I think, that drives Mira's actions. Priyanka Chopra Jonas and Sophia Barclay have quite intoxicating, playful qualities that they bring to the fore. I thought they played their roles very, very well. Rob Burns has been written with this awkward, nice guy image in mind, which Sam Heughan capitalises upon. I must admit, I thought, especially scenes with him and early on, there was some of the pauses seemed a bit too long. I just think it needed a bit of tightening. Lydia West, I thought she did a really good job. She plays Burns' dismissive younger workmate, Lisa Scott, and that's quite a nice role as well. So let's get on to Celine Dion. This is her big screen debut. And I said this to you earlier, that she has a lot of fun making the most of her diva reputation. She sort of plays that up. And there are lots I think there's about 5 different songs, new songs from Celine Dion as well. So it's quite a strong score. So it's a film, this is a score overall, not just Dion songs. And it's a film really for romantics who are prepared to invest in make-believe. So you can see why I'm drawing a parallel between this and the movie we spoke about, Book Club, The Next Chapter. But this is obviously aimed at a younger audience. And yeah, I mean, it's incredibly manufactured though, Peter, isn't it?
It is. In fact, I found this film to be an incredibly cynical exercise, and I'll explain what I mean by that.
Yeah.
First of all, as you say, it's based on a novel which was filmed in Germany in 2016 called SMS für dich, or SMS for You, by Carolina Herfurth. And that was a good, strong drama about loss, about grieving, and about finding love again. It certainly was not a comedy. And in fact, I don't even think that Love Again is a comedy. So first of all, the original German film was far superior because it didn't have that sort of cynical tone of trying to invest some comedy in it. Secondly, I know the filmmakers were desperately trying to find a film for Priyanka Chopra because she is a very well-known Indian actress, and now she's working in Hollywood. And they're trying to find a good vehicle for her. And of course, I found it very cynical, actually, to cast her husband, Nick Jonas, as a small role in the film.
Why did you find that cynical? I thought, that added a sense of realism, but also, I kind of like the fact that this is a guy who oversteps the mark. I didn't have a problem with that. What troubled you?
Because I found it a nod to show business, and as a way of saying, well, here is Priyanka with her husband, who is well known in the film industry. Let's put them together, and that will give the audience something else to appreciate. I found that very cynical.
Funny, I'll take a different approach. I think people who are going to see this movie are going to thoroughly enjoy it. There was when I'm not sure whether you saw it on the opening media night or not, but there was an appreciable recognition and a sort of a sharp intake of breath kind of thing on that occasion, and I thought that worked very well. So okay, we've got a different view of that, but keep going, please.
Yep. Okay. And thirdly, the other cynical part of the film is the use of Celine Dion. I know that they tried to convince her to be in the film for quite a long time, and eventually she relented.
As well, isn't she? Producing this one too, is she not? I believe
she's involved in it now. But of course, again, here's the cynical exercise. It's a showcase for her performances, for her concert tour, for her songs. And that's the main reason she was included. Again, it's for box office potential and to make this film as commercially viable as possible. And yet, when you start to investigate the screenplay, which I compared with the original German, I found it lacking in so much that it just seemed so contrived, dramatic rather than amusing. Even though it's billed as a romantic comedy, I didn't find it a comedy at all. And I just found the story development was just totally out of bounds with the way the story could have gone, in terms of that loss, that grief that the German original did.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't see the German original, so I can only judge this based on what I've seen here. I mean, I think it will garner an audience. I'm not sure how large an audience it will garner, and I think there'll be some brickbats as well as some sort of joy out of it. But I didn't think it was. It could have been worse. It's probably it's a strange way of saying it. There were certainly a lot of cringeworthy moments there, which there were in book club as well. But there was something quite pleasant about it as well, even though, how does one get over grief? And they obviously decided to play it the way they did. So the grief was an important thread that ran through it. But how do you move on from that? That was sort of the principle that they seem to follow in this American version of it. I mean, are you based on what you're just saying to me? You're not even going to pass this one if I'm going to ask you to score out of 10 now?
No, and I wanted to also mention the dreadful use of supporting characters. Russell Tovey as Sam Heughan's gay best friend was just treated really dismissively, as was Celia Imrie, such a good actress, given a small but throwaway sort of role.
Well, I know this sounds. I agree with the gay work colleague, and by the way, these are journalists who never work. I did notice that as well. But yes, what role did Celia Imrie play? I'm afraid I can't even remember.
I'm trying to remember too, because it was so unclear and so poorly developed.
Oh yes, no, I do remember. No, I do remember. She was the publisher.
Right.
Yes, yeah. Okay, I mean, she had a small. Yeah, she's a very fine actor. I agree. She didn't have a lot to do, but okay. So beyond that, can you see anybody going to see this film and paying for it?
Look, I think it will have some commercial success. Again, it's a romantic drama. People will go and see it for the cast. Look, I think people will go, but that doesn't mean that it's worthy of getting an audience.
So given that, I mean, because I'm going to give this a 6, so I'll start there. And bear in mind that I gave book club 5.5, or book club the next chapter. So I'm giving this one a 6. I enjoyed this a little bit more, even though there were elements that didn't kind of congeal. Do you agree with me, by the way, that there were sometimes the editing could have been tighter?
Possibly. I think the writing should have been better. That's where I'm coming from.
Fair enough.
Look, I gave book club 5 out of 10 because at least it was reasonably passable in terms of some of the writing. I can only give Love Again 4 out of 10.
Wow. Okay. So there you go, folks. I mean, I think given what we've said, November is definitely the film to see out of those 3. Totally different subject matter, of course. But look, let's move on to something that I saw, which I think you may have seen the movie. This is now a musical, but it's really, really good. It's called Once, and it's being put on in Melbourne by Darlinghurst Theatre Company, Sydney-based, and it's on at the Comedy Theatre as we speak. And I thought it was a really brilliant slice of musical theatre, quite an inspirational piece. It's sort of ear and eye pleasing. It balances heart and humour. Now, do you remember the 2007 movie by John Carney, Once?
Yes, I do. I remember it was an encounter between a busker and a musician, and
Yes.
And how they get together and write a song and and also have this romantic encounter. I thought Once was actually a pretty good film.
It was a very good film. I do remember that, and it's a really, really good musical. I mean, superb. It concerns a struggling Irish muso who's on the verge of giving up, and an effervescent Czech woman. So you've got the latter, the Czech woman. They're basically called girl and guy, so that makes it kind of easy. But the girl is played by Stephanie Cacamo. She sees the guy, Toby Francis, with a guitar in his hand, singing what he intends to be his last song. and she praises him for it because he's done a very good job. Now, he works with his father as a vacuum cleaner repairman. He's known as the Hoover guy, right? So, and he's taken aback at the boldness that the girl has. She's got this sort of won't take no for an answer attitude, and it's a beautiful portrayal, a brilliant portrayal actually by Stephanie Kikamo. He wrote the song that he was performing for a woman that he loves, and that woman is played by Ruby Clark. But the woman left him 6 months ago to pursue a life in New York. And now this Czech girl who happens to work in a struggling music shop encourages the guy to press on with his original music. So not to give it up, because he was basically ready to leave the guitar in the bar and just walk away. And over the space of a week, the pair forms a really strong and meaningful relationship. Both are clearly into each other. But the girl, who is a fine piano player, is dealing with her own issues. So the book's by Enda Walsh, the music and lyrics by Glenn Hansard and Markita Iglova. And I've got to say that, I don't know whether you know this, Peter, but Once holds quite it does, a unique place in musical history. And I say that because it's the only Broadway show with music that has won an Oscar, a Grammy, an Olivier Award, and a Tony Award. And by the way, it received 8 Tonys, including Best Musical and Best Book of a Musical. So wouldn't that be nice to sort of carry around with you? The only Broadway show that's won all of these grand awards. It's set on the streets of Dublin. It is a very tender love story infused with charm and character. Now, it's funny, we've just been talking about comedy and we've been talking about romance, and this story, and you might remember this from the movie, Peter, doesn't follow a conventional path in that regard. It's not sort of, the outcome may not be what you anticipate.
That's very true. Yeah, I do remember there was a twist in the story. Yes.
Yeah, and again, so it's about the writing, and it is beautifully written and directed. It's splendid. I couldn't be more fulsome in my praise, and it's led from the front by an emotionally mature and musically polished Stephanie Kikamo. The performances are wonderful. They really are. You've got Kikamo with this silky smooth voice. She comes across as a really huge natural talent, and has an innate ability to deliver comedic zingers without pretense. And that really is an art form. And Toby Francis, he excels as a man whose head is turned, who's shaken up by the appearance of his unexpected saviour, as we can call Kikamo's character. And we watch on with delight as he transitions, this is Toby Francis, his character, complete with an impressive vocal range, into one of self-belief. And you've also got a number of other characters that are worth mentioning. Rupert Reed plays up the protective jocularity associated with the passionate music shop owner, Billy. And of course, that's the music shop where Kikamo's character works. And Anthony Craig, well, he has many moments to savour as a bank manager come musical wannabe who displays a great deal of sensitivity as well as some endeavour. And that includes a really scene-stealing few minutes when he breaks into song in front of the guy and girl that have approached him for a loan. And Victoria Falconer, she has her time to shine. She plays a seductress called Reza. She also happens to be the musical director of this particular piece. So very, very nice to see the two roles combined. Pavan Kumar Hari plays a heavy metal drummer and a bloke addicted to coffee. He plays the character Svek, and he does that really well. He's quite the character, shall we say. And there is a delightful bearish restraint about Jay Lagaia as the Hoover guy's father, Dar. So that's just some of the characters. Not a weak note in what is a truly stellar showing by a highly talented ensemble, all of whom play a range of musical instruments and sing. That's what's so special about this. You've got, I think it was 12 people on stage. I read in the notes there were 13, but I only counted 12. And having said that, they play the musical instruments magnificently, and the chorus numbers are terrific, really, really strong. So they sing beautifully, they play wonderfully. The actors obviously therefore double as the show's band. The set by Hugh O'Connor, and we've got a bar. That's the essence of it, but also a makeshift music shop with a movable piano. And then there's a corner for the guy's threadbare room. I like that very much. The lighting by Peter Ruby struck me as moonbeams coming down. I thought it was really a standout feature of the piece as well. And so this is a conflagration of the grand, let me call it that, a script that can move mountains, music to stir the soul, and performances that delight and excel. So having been totally engaged, thoroughly entertained, I walked out of the comedy theatre feeling elated. I said to my wife, gee, doesn't this put you in a great mood? I mean, that's what we want out of our films, out of our theatre, out of books we read, exhibitions we see. It's directed by Richard Carroll, musical direction I mentioned already by Victoria Falconer, and it's playing at the Comedy Theatre until the 4th of June. So you've got a little time to see it. And yeah, I mean, I think it reflects extremely well. I like pieces, Peter, that it can be formed in, it can be a book, it can be a play, it can be a movie, and it works in all formats. I mean, that's quite something.
It certainly is, and it sounds like it is a really good stage adaptation. So, yeah, I certainly liked the original film, which did very well.
Yeah, it did indeed. Now, talking about original films, I wanted to mention, did you see Head On? It was Head On should have been called Full On. It was a movie. I'm just trying to think what year it came out.
It must be around 2000 or thereabouts, maybe.
I would have thought so. I mean, this is sort of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but you remember it. I don't think you could have seen the movie without remembering it. It's sort of seared into the brain at the time. And I mean, do you recollect what your thoughts were when you saw it? I mean, it's not a film for everybody, is it?
Well, I thought it was a really brave. In 1998, I just saw that it came out. It was very brave film for Anna Kokkinos to deal with a man's wrestling with his, I think it was his Greek heritage, played by Alex Dimitriadis,
and his sexuality, yeah,
and his sexuality, exactly. And there were some fairly confronting scenes, some very explicit scenes in the film, which I think was an R-rated when it was released. And but I thought it was a good, brave film dealing with some complex issues.
Yeah, it was. And look, this is it's an amazing performance because there is one person on stage for 95 minutes, Peter. Ooh. That is incredibly hard, but the nuance that he puts into the role and the fact that he uses pauses very, very effectively, it is really something. His name is Danny Ball, and he plays this 19-year-old unemployed, reckless, gay Australian, right? They're in Melbourne, and he travels the length and breadth of the city. And I mean, his poison in this case, it's not sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's sex, drugs, and grunge and hip hop. So Ari's drawn to Melbourne's gay clubs, unprotected sex, hard drugs, and tell you what, it's dead set easy to get hold of the stuff, and thumping music. And he distances and denounces his parents, who are most disappointed in him. So it's 24 hours. Loaded is 24 hours in the life of this young man. And this is playing, by the way, at Malthouse Theatre as we speak. And a lot goes down in that day. Now, the novel was first published in 1995, and it was by the Australian writer Christos Tsiolkas. And then it was adapted in 98, as you say, to Head On. And then it was then reimagined as an audio adaptation in 2020. And the director of Loaded is Stephen Nicolazzo. And he joins writers Don Giovannini and Christos Tsiolkas, who also did The Slap, in presenting Ari's anarchic odyssey, right? And he trawls the length and breadth, as I've mentioned, of Melbourne's burbs in getting to the end of this 24-hour period. It's gritty, it's raw, it's raunchy, it's full on, it pulls no punches. There's something even more confronting about it when you've got a live human being in front of you, Peter, if you can appreciate that, right? I mean, it's strong enough on film, but when you've got somebody in front of you cavorting and carrying on and speaking, there's no off valve here, right? He speaks about sex acts in minute detail, And I mean, this is why I'm saying this has also got an R rating, as it well should. I mean, it's one for mature audiences who can handle frequent coarse language, explicit references to sex acts that are some of which are consensual and others that are non-consensual. Again, a mature audience that can handle homophobic, misogynistic, and culturally derogatory slurs. And there are also multiple drug references. So it throws all of this at us. It's a hell of a script that Ball channels with visceral distinction, giving it voice and, as I said, nuance. Superb portrayal. Danny Ball, I mean, it's raw and raunchy, as I've mentioned. Danny Ball is this ball of pent-up energy. It goes like the clappers for the hour and a half plus. He doesn't miss a beat. Superb portrayal, and he conjures vivid mind pictures. He transports us to where Urry goes. The scenes, the smells, the tastes, and it's just an amazing production in that regard. Variously dressed and undressed, his journey is certainly not one for the faint-hearted. At times, it's really ugly. It's brutal. And then again, there are moments of ecstasy. And with all of that in mind, the sound, the set, the lighting design, I thought were vital and effective in bolstering just how real the production feels. It comes across as a slice of the seedy side of life. So it's not going to suit everybody. It really isn't. Some people are going to find it too much. I think that was always the film's intention. That was always the intention of the book. But it has a place. It certainly has a place in artistic history now. And here we are looking at it, sort of 1995, 28 years after the novel that made such a splash. And it's still making a splash now on the stage. It's on at the Beckett Theatre, Malthouse Theatre, until the 3rd of June 2023. I don't suppose that surprises you that basically you've got the strength of the conviction of the original novel and the original film on stage. But you can just imagine, Peter, that its impact is strong.
Okay, yes, it sounds like it's very impactful, especially considering there's no other actors, no one else involved, just the main actor.
Right. And that's really a feat. And I've seen quite a number of individual actors doing this in recent years. And boy, it must be incredibly wearing doing it night after night as well. It must be emotionally draining just to fill a role like that. Before we go on J88 FM, I did want to make reference to another production which is only on. It finishes today, but it finished today actually. But having said that, I hope you get the chance to see it. It's called The Wrong Horse, and it was playing at the MC Showroom in Paran, and it concerned a couple of bumbling small-time crims who luck out in what is really a farcical comedy, The Wrong Horse. And we're talking about best mates. Now, they named Noddy and Big Ears, which I thought was a very nice touch, played by Darren Morton and Dom Phelan, Peter. And Big Ears, by the way, he's got a wind issue. Now, he's forever sponging off Noddy, dropping in at his place all hours of the day and night, drinking his booze, eating his food. And these two have known each other for 6 years, and they do jobs together. So I think the suggestion is that they met each other behind prison bars. But anyway, Noddy's the supposed brains of the operation, but he has what he terms number dyslexia. Now, that means he gets his digits mixed up, which I just did with my words. It's hardly what you want from a gambler, which he is. And you've got a day on the punt bringing with it unexpected surprises. So that's a starting point for it. It's really slapstick humour on steroids. I mean, stupidity abounds. Some of it is improvised in the show, which I really liked, and the cast has a wow of a time with the material. I really liked some of the performances there. There's a point about halfway through the first act where it really took off for me, and there's some great performances, including those of the two leads I've mentioned, but also Bridget Darvis, who plays several roles, including Mary the Strapper. I'm talking about Horse Strapper. And then she plays a bespectacled librarian and does both of those roles with absolute distinction. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of like the props and staging add to the hilarity, by the way. You imagine a two-person couch doubling as a car, complete with a disconnected furry steering wheel, and then handheld swinging synthetic dice. Let your mind go there. Really, really fun. Delightful throwback, good time vibe, called The Wrong Horse. Look out for it, and hopefully it will come back. Peter, thanks very much for your involvement today.
My pleasure, and so much to see at the German Film Festival at the moment.
And there is indeed, yeah. Please, folks, go out and see Palace Cinemas, who always do these festivals very, very well. We'll do it all again next week. You have been listening to First on Film and Entertainment. Alex First and Peter Krause signing off for another week.